This video is sponsored by Zebronics. If you guys are looking for a really high quality speakers or maybe a cool mechanical keyboard or a super responsive mouse or a dope looking cabinet for your next build, then make sure to check out zebronics.com. From slim LED TVs to wireless headsets, they have it all at a really good and reasonable price. For more information, check out the link in the description below. Hey guys, what's up? This is Nikhil from dopemotions.com and welcome to this brand new After Effects tutorial. In today's video, we will learn how to create a really nice, simple and minimal looking logo reveal in After Effects from scratch. So without any further ado, let's get straight into the tutorial and get started. Alright, so here we are in After Effects. So as always, I'm going to start by creating a new composition. Let's rename this to main comp. 1920 into 1080, 30 frames and 10 seconds should be good enough, and hit OK. So the first thing that I'm going to do is create those lines basically that you see at the beginning, this kind of an X-shaped lines. So let's go ahead and create those. Really simple to create. Just select the pen tool and set the stroke to around, let's go with 3 pixels. Turn on title action save. And let's create a line by holding shift just like this. So there we have a really simple line. Let's go ahead and add a trim part to this, and then we can animate the trim part, and that's it to this. So let's set this at the very beginning. Let's set the end property to 0. Create a keyframe, go to 1 second. Let's bring this up to 100, and maybe I'll go to around, let's say maybe 1 second and 10 frames, or maybe just 10 frames. Create a keyframe on the start property. Let's go to 1 second and 10 frames and set this to 100. So now we have something like that, but this is not what we are going for. So what we can do is, let's go to 20 frames maybe, bring this keyframe right over here and bring this keyframe right over here. So now we have something like that, as you can see, but still the motion is not pretty good. So let's fix this up. So select all the keyframes, hit F9 to ease those keyframes, go to graph editor, and if your graph editor doesn't look like this, make sure you're working in the edit speed graph and not in the edit value graph. So now I can select the keyframes, and maybe I'll just select first this two and drag the handles just like that. Select this two and drag the handles just like that, creating kind of a peak. Maybe these are just too close, so just tweak a little bit according to your requirements. So let's see what we have. Yep, looks absolutely perfect to me. Let's rename this pretty quick. You can call it anything. I'm just gonna call this, let's say, X lines. And once we are happy with the line, let's center this up pretty quick, just like that. And what we can do is go ahead and add a repeater to it. So let's go ahead and add a repeater. We need 4 copies, so I'm gonna set this to 4. And let's rotate this up. So let's go to transform repeater and let's rotate this up, but before that, make sure the position is set to 0, and then we can basically go ahead and rotate it. So I'm gonna rotate it to, let's go with maybe 90 degrees. Yep, looks good. Let's turn off the title action save, and as you can see, it's not perfectly aligned. So what we can do is just select the X line and use the arrow keys just to tweak it a little bit. So maybe I'll use the position, not the arrow keys, but I'll use the position in the transform shape, and let's tweak this up a little bit, and there we go, looks perfect. And then we can rotate this by hitting R on the keyboard and rotate this by maybe 45 degrees, I guess. Yeah, perfect. Let's align this at the center just like that. So now we have our X lines animating, just as you can see in the example. Now let's go ahead and add this kind of squares. So it's really simple. Let's go to somewhere around 20 frames maybe. Let's create a rectangle. Select the rectangle tool and let's set the stroke to around, let's go with 7 pixels, and double click on this. We don't need the fill, so we can set this to none. hit OK, go to rectangle 1, rectangle path 1, and hold Alt and click on this link icon 2 times. So it's gonna make the rectangle a square. So now we have a precise shape, as you can see. So let's set this to somewhere around, let's go with 250. Okay, and let's animate this up, but first of all I'm going to rename this to cube and animate this size. So let's go to around 1 second and 10 frames maybe. Let's see. Around 2 seconds. So let's go to 2 seconds and create a keyframe on the rotation first of all. So hit R to bring down the rotation properties. Create a keyframe, go back in time, maybe at 1 second, or let's go to somewhere around there, and let's rotate this to something like -180. Looks good to me. And I'm gonna also animate the scale pretty quick. So not the scale, the size of the cube. So let's go into contents, rectangle 1, rectangle path 1, create a keyframe on the size. Let's drag that keyframe to somewhere around 20 frames, 1 second and 20 frames. Let's go to right over there and set this to 0. So now we have something like that, as you can see. I hope we are going right. Or maybe let's bring this to 2 seconds as well. That would look pretty good. Yep, looks pretty good. Let's select the layer and hit U so we can see just the keyframes. Select the keyframes and hit F9 to ease those keyframes. Go into graph editor and just drag it, creating a curve like that. Let's see. Yep, looks good to me. Maybe I'll drag this keyframe to around 20 frames, I guess. That should look pretty good. I think that is looking perfect. Maybe I'll increase the stroke a bit to around, let's go with 8 pixels. Yep, that looks pretty good to me. The second thing I'm going to do, or the third thing that I'm going to do, is add that small square, which is pretty simple, just the animation of the scaling. But before that, I'm going to do the rotation animation of this. So let's hit R to bring down the rotation properties. And let's go to around 2 seconds. And what I can do is, let's hit U so we can see all the keyframes that are right over here. At 2 seconds, I'm going to create a keyframe for the rotation. Go to 3 seconds and rotate it in the opposite direction. So it's rotating this way, then this way. So let's go to maybe -180. So let's select the keyframes and hit F9 to ease those keyframes. Okay, looks pretty good. Yep. I know the animation is pretty lame at the moment, but we will fix it after going into the graph editor. So yep, looks pretty good. Now let's go ahead and add that small square to this thing. So what I can do is select the rectangle tool again, just double click on it. Go into rectangle path 1, hold Alt and double click. And I'm going to set this to, let's go with 100. Or maybe let's go with 60. Okay, so we don't need the strokes, so I'm going to set this to 0 and add a fill or white color. Okay, looks pretty good. Maybe go with 70. And let's rename this to YT. I don't know why I renamed it to YouTube, but YT, I don't know. Anyways, let's select the cube and hit U so we can see the keyframes, so we know what, the timing of the animation. So let's go right over here and go into and hit UU to bring down the size property. Create a keyframe, go back in time to 1 second maybe, and let's set this to 0. So now we have something like that. Select the keyframes, hit F9, go to graph editor and create a curve just like that. Okay, looks pretty sweet. Now let's add some rotation to this. So go right over here, create a keyframe on rotation. Go to 3 seconds and set this to 180. So it's going to rotate in the opposite direction. Select the keyframes and the same basic thing that we do. Oh, what I can do is select both of this rotation properties and hit F9 to easy ease those keyframes. Go to graph editor and let's drag it just like that. So let's see what we have. Yep, that looks pretty good, and of course they will look more better when you turn on the motion blur. And if you see this kind of weird artifacts of motion blur, what you can do is go into the composition settings. So hit Control K, I guess. Yep. Go into advanced and you can increase the samples per frame. So if you increase this, you'll get rid of those kind of lines, but it will also increase the render time, and the project can get a bit heavier. So make sure to, depending on what kind of PC you have or system you have, make sure to play around with the settings according to that. So as you can see, the motion blur is looking pretty nice. Yep, looks really good, but I don't think I need motion blur for this scene, so I'm just gonna turn this off. So far so good, really simple and easy to create. Now let's see the next step. Okay, so we need to create the scaling animation and the strokes. So it's really simple. Let's go to 3 seconds and scale this up. Basically increase the size, not scale this up. So let's go and create a keyframe on the size. Let's go to 4 seconds and set this to somewhere around there. Maybe 220, looks perfect to me. Select the keyframes, hit F9, graph editor, and create something like that. Yep, looks pretty good. Now let's add those strokes that we saw. So we can just duplicate this cube itself. So let's hit Control D and let's rename this to strokes. Hit U so we can get rid of all the keyframes. Increase the size a bit, just right over here, maybe around 300 pixels. Works good. And let's go ahead and add a trim path. There we go. Let's set the end property to 50% and let's animate this up. So what I can do is, let's just set this to 0. Set this to 0 as well. Create a keyframe, go to, let's say, 20 frames. Increase this up to 50%. So now we have a basic animation just like that. Let's see the animation one more time. Okay, got it. Let's go to 15 frames and let's drag this keyframe right over here. Create a new keyframe on the start property, just like that. Go to 4 seconds and let's bring this up to 50%. Select the keyframes, hit F9, go to graph editor and create a peak just like that. There we go. Let's see what we have. Yep, looks pretty good to me. Just the one thing that I'm going to do is just make this around 4 pixels. So see what we have. Pretty cool. And basically I can just duplicate this up, hit Control D to duplicate it and just rotate this up. Let's rotate this to 0, I guess. Oh, it's not in the position. It's not accurately in the position, I guess. Let's see. Oh, yep, it's actually perfectly in the position. Looking really, really cool. So far, so good. Let's go ahead and using the same technique, I'm going to do the circles as well. So what I can basically do is, at the rotation, maybe around 2 seconds, let's create circles. So let's click on ellipse, select the ellipse tool. You don't need the fill, set this to none. And let's create, holding Alt, Control and Shift to create a perfect circle, something maybe this big. And I think I can copy paste the trim part, so let's see, I'm not sure. Let's go to contents, trim parts, hit Control C to copy it. Go to shape 1 that we just created, Control V to paste it. And I think it, yep, we can copy it, hit Control Z. And what I can do is, let's go to X lines and copy the trim parts from the X lines. So let's Go into shape 1, trim parts, hit Control C to copy it. Shape layer 1, hit Control V to paste it. Let's see. No, not working. So what we can do is just delete this group and do it manually. Let's rename this to circle maybe, or 1. At 2 seconds, add a trim path. Set this to 0, go to create a keyframe and go to 3 seconds or maybe 2 seconds and 15 frames, I guess. Set this to 100. Create a keyframe on the start property, go to 3 seconds and set this to 100. And we can also offset this a bit, so let's offset the animation as well. Create a keyframe on offset, drag that keyframe right over here holding shift, so it's gonna snap it up. And let's set this to maybe -90. Let's see what we have. Yep, looks pretty good actually. Happy with it. Let's hit F9, let's go to graph editor and let's create a peak just like that. Yep, looks really good. Turn on the motion blur for this. Yep, I'm happy with that, as you can see. Perfect. Let's hit U and crop this up. We don't need to see all the complete layer, so I like cropping stuff so we can, just to be a bit more clean. Okay, that is looking pretty good. Let's hit Control D to duplicate it. Hit UU 2 times so we can increase the size just like that. And just to give a little bit of randomness, I'm going to rotate this just like that. Make sure the anchor point is in the center. Center this up. Perfect. So now we have something like that, as you can see. Let's create one more. You can create as many circles as you want, basically, just to give a bit more randomness to this thing. Something like that. And the middle one, I'm going to rotate it in the opposite direction. So what we can do is set the scale to -100 maybe. That should work, I guess. And no, it isn't working. Oh, I need to unlink this. Set this to 100. And now it should. Yup. Perfect. Looking cool. So let's see what's next. Scales up and then our logo comes in. So what we can do is create a new composition for the logo. Let's make this 250 pixels. Oh, let's rename this to logo first of all. And set the width and height to 250 pixels. Hit OK. Let's drag in the logo, whichever logo that you have. I'll scale this down a bit, somewhere around there. And let's go ahead and drag in the logo composition. So logo comes up right over here at 4 seconds. Let's add a fill so we can see the logo. And set it to any color that you want. I'm going to set this to kind of a darker gray or black, you can say. And also I'm going to scale this down a bit. So let's scale this down a bit. Okay, perfect. And then what I can do is select the YT, that is the shape that we created. Hit Control D, hit U so we don't get any keyframes. We don't need actually any keyframes. And let's set this to logo matte. And drag this above the logo composition and set the logo track matte, logo composition track matte to alpha matte. And now I can animate the logo just like that. So let's keep it right over here. Hit P to bring down the position properties. Create a keyframe, go to 5 seconds and bring this up in the center just like that. So now we have something like this. Select it, hit F9, go to graph editor, and the same thing that we do always. Yep, perfect. Go to 5 seconds. And now what I can do is create a new null object and parent the logo and the logo matte. So let's add a parent column pretty quick. Parent this to the null. And what all we need to parent, actually we need to parent the YT layer to the null. and I think the stroke as well. Nope, not the stroke, the cube as well. So we can animate the null and all the shapes are gonna get animated. We don't need to do it individually. Alright, pretty good. Let's hit P to bring down, to create a keyframe on the position. Go to 6 seconds and let's place this somewhere around there, and also add in the text that you want. In this case, I'll just copy it up. You can type in whatever text that you want. So I'm just going to copy this titles, Control C to copy it, Control V to paste it up, and there we have it. And let's go ahead and animate this, but before that I'm going to pre-comp it. So let's pre-comp it. Let's call this text, and we can basically, what we can do is hit P to bring down the position properties and create a keyframe just like that. Bring that keyframe right over here. Oh no, just leave this up at 6 seconds, and let's drag this right over here. So now we have something like that. Let's select the keyframes and hit F9. Go to graph editor, create a curve like that. Now we have something like that, as you can see. We can see we have a little bit of problem in the null position. So let's select the keyframes, select both of them actually, hit F9, go to graph editor and create something like that. Yep, looking really cool. Maybe I'll increase the time to around 2 seconds, or maybe 1 second and 15 frames or something like that. Yeah, perfect. But as you can see, the text is not looking the way we want it to. So what I can do is go into the rectangle tool and create a shape which is gonna serve as a mat for the text. So I'm gonna create a shape just something like that, and let's rename this to title mat maybe. Okay, there we go. Let's change the track mat of the text to alpha mat. Oh, not alpha mat actually. Set this to alpha inverted mat. Now, first of all, make sure to parent the title mat to the null. And now we should have a text animation as well. So it's really simple and easy to create a really nice and professional looking logo reveal, which is looking pretty cool actually, as you can see. Let's add a really nice background pretty quick. So hit Control Y to create a new solid. Let's rename this to BG for background. And let's add a 4-color gradient. Bring this down, and of course you can keep it any color that you want. I'm gonna go with kind of a darker purple and rest all to black, something like that. Let's bring this on the top and place this right over here. Just depends on your personal preference. You don't need to exactly follow it. You can keep it at any color that you want. Nice, subtle and clean looking logo reveal is ready. So as you can see, it's basically, using the same exact technique in different ways to create a really cool looking logo reveal, or maybe something else as well you can create with this technique. So I hope you get the idea and learn something new today. And if you did, make sure to subscribe, comment and like, and I'll see you in my next video. Till then, take care and thank you so much for watching, guys, and don't forget to stay raw, stay creative.